Hey, welcome to my Fridays 5. This is Suzanne Caldeira. I'm a mortgage originator with Guaranteed Rate. On my Fridays 5, I'm reaching out to people that have inspired me that either I know or want to know, and I hope that they inspire you. The views on my Fridays 5 are my own and my guest's own, and not necessarily those of Guaranteed Rate. Today, I am super excited to have Frankie B. Washington on here, who is an amazing, amazing artist.
Yes.
I am so excited. So I'm jumping into question number 1, my dear, and I want to know.
Hello, everybody.
know,
First off, what's happening?
yes.
What's happening? All right.
All right, you got to tell us what inspires you.
Whew, what inspires me? Well, it's weird because I would say that my mom was someone who inspired me. Where she was a woman who she just believed in the sense that the American ideal of just working hard, achieving your dreams. Don't allow fear and excuses to kind of stop you from getting to where you want to get to. And when I was as a kid, I had all kind of crazy dreams. I mean, I wanted to be, I love robots, giant robots. I had these dreams of being like a robotic engineer and, being in the Air Force and all these different things. But I just wasn't great in math, in high school and stuff like that. And I grew up in Boston, by the way. So I was very fortunate that at the time when I went to high school, and that was back in the late 80s, I had wonderful teachers, mentors who were like, okay, kid, you like this and this and this, but we really see that you're really a good artist. And so maybe we should try to guide you down the path of making a living as an artist. So they started putting me into programs that dealt with art and stuff. And they were like, yeah, you can make a living. You got to work hard at it, but you can definitely make a living doing this. And so, from that point, it just sort of drove me down the path to where am I, 30 years, knock on wood, 30 years later, where I'm still at.
Now, were you one of those kids that, I don't know, wouldn't be paying attention and would be doodling and the teacher saw like, holy crap, look what's on his notebook? Is that really how it happened? That's how I'm envisioning it.
I'll be honest. My mom raised me with a very kind of disciplined kind of way of learning. I'll use that term, where it was more like, because I was going to parochial school, Catholic school. So she really was like, education is A on the list. So in some degree, yeah, I was still doodling stuff, but I also was very mindful that I had to get my work done. So I was always able to find that place. Like I had friends who they would either be doodling and not doing their homework and they would get in trouble. Whereas I would doodle and still get my homework done. And I would just kind of, glide by it. It was just like, oh, wow, you did great grades, but you also doodle. Like my math teacher or whatever, or my English teacher, they'll flip the paper over and there'll be drawings on the back. But I still would have the homework done already. So they'd be like, oh, okay.
What do you think kept you from straying? Because sometimes, kids that'll come from a background where they have a stern parent, they want to go the opposite way. Yeah. And they don't want to do that. What was it? What was it that you think that your mom, what did she show you that made you say, you know what, I think she's right?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll go back to just when I grew up in Boston. I grew up in Boston and then grew up actually in Jamaica Plain. And then we moved to Dorchester and stuff like that. And I mean, life itself, the things in life just showed me. I had a lot of friends, family members and stuff like that who had some hard times and went through hard things and stuff like that. And that was my lesson. Like, it was like she was part of that lesson, but then just the fact of the things around me. If you just open your eyes and you begin to see different things, you go, that's not the path I should want to, should be pushing for. This path right here is going to lead me down a way that's not going to be really good, very negative. While this path right here, although it's hard and tough, there's still a potential where I can do really good and I can at least wake up in the morning and say, yes, I still love myself kind of thing. And so that's why I kind of, and yeah, I grappled with it, even when I went to art school and stuff and whatever, I still grappled. I was always on that line and stuff. I'll admit, when I was younger, I had a temper. And that was one of the things where, I'm very grateful and very blessed that I had mentors in my life people who just came out of woodworks, and they just kind of just offered advice to me and stuff like that. And it really helped me so that I could curb that I don't know, I don't want to call it the 20-year-old, like, everything and whatever kind of thing. They kind of were able just to school me and say, hey, Frank, look, man, we get it, but you can make it in this career. You can do it, but you got to be able to control these things. And so I took it to heart.
That's great that
So
they saw that in you, and that's a good
yeah,
lead up to my next question, which
yep,
I think you've already answered.
yeah,
You've got your teachers, your mom,
yeah.
as mentors for you. Who have been some or some other mentors that you've had in your life, Frankie?
Oh man, oh God, there's so many. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I can say that there was a teacher that I had who I went to art school. His name was Charlie Banks. He eventually was a teacher who I actually did work with, because I worked in advertising as well. So we would do jobs together. I'm with my teacher from art school doing jobs. So, and he always would be like, hey, Charlie is more like he was in the service, the army and stuff before he, before he decided to go more into his artwork and stuff. So we'd have that kind of military kind of like approach and whatever, how he talked and stuff. But the nicest guy, let me not get that right, but just the nicest guy. But still, he had the way like, come on, kid, get the work done. Didn't I teach you this? That kind of stuff. And so he would be one of the major influences for me. I mean, there was a woman by the name of Ann Thorpe, who was she was an art buyer at one of the major agencies in Boston. She schooled me when I got into advertising earlier on, kind of guided me, just on certain things and the working in advertising. Advertising was really tough. It's a very it's a really, I tell any young artist, it's a really amazing field, but you definitely got to build a thick skin. If you can build a thick skin, and you'll do very well, and and stuff like that. But she was a person who helped to sort of fortify that, like to be like, okay, boom, don't take stuff personal, chin up, make sure to understand deadlines, that kind of stuff. So I would put her on the list as well. And there's just so many. I mean, because the thing about it, I think that in all our lives, there are mentors. There are people out there who do offer us these moments of wisdom. It's up to you to make that decision whether or not you're going to listen to it. And I always feel that wisdom comes from just any and everything, but you just got to take that moment to just allow it to seep in. Now, sometimes it may be stuff that might not work for you, fine. But I bet you somewhere in there may be something that you can just latch on and be like, okay, I like that.
Yeah. Do you think that there have been any pivotal moments in your life, or any turning points that you can look back and go, oh yeah, and I think you've answered it a lot as we're having this conversation, but I'm curious if there's maybe something else that
I will say again, when I first started in advertising, I just got out of doing work for an animation studio, and a friend of mine was working for one of the big ad agencies, Hill Holiday, and he was like, hey Frank, this other agency, another big guy at the time, Bronner, Schlossberg and Humphrey, they're looking for some illustrators, send some stuff over. So I said, all right. So I sent stuff over, but it was more like comic book related stuff. And then I didn't hear a call back. So I was freaking out. I said, oh man. I said, what's going on? I called my friend up and he said, well, what did you send? I said, well, this is what I sent. And he said, dude, this isn't comic books. This is advertising. So he said, look at magazines, draw as fast as you can. And at the time there was no computers. So we had to do marker coloring or doing dye. So he said, just color it really quick and then send that. As soon as I did that, I got work. So I got in, and then I was working on, I think it was Delta Airlines project. And it was a very last minute. This is the time, again, before computers, where you can send stuff, through emails. They literally would have to take stuff out like 7 p.m. to FedEx, and then to ship it off to wherever the meeting's gonna be. So, I was nervous, scared and whatever. And then I had this art director who came in, and he was being very hard on me. I mean, really, really hard on me. And I had that anger. I still had that anger in me. I was young. And I just remember that moment where he said something to me and I popped up like I wanted to fight this guy. And somebody in the studio, this guy named John Montero, he said, Frank, he just called me out. He just yelled my name. And it's like something just snapped. Like I snapped back into where I was, because I was staring this guy down and whatever. And he said, hey man, why don't you go on, take a break and, go to the restroom, whatever, And I was like, all right, man. And I was still fuming, because I felt like that mindset of like, this guy dissed me. That was the whole thing inside of me. It was like he dissed me. And it was like, all of a sudden I was going back to this weird kind of mentality, the street mentality, like somebody diss you, you got to get respect, that kind of thing, which is not great. You're not supposed to. My mom, that was one thing also she told me, was that she's like, there's many times you're going to have these battles in life. And sometimes you may have to rely on these, but you don't want to rely on these. You want to rely on this. And then that kind of came to me. So when he called me, I went to the restroom. I remember splashing, taking some cold water, splashing my face, looked in the mirror really hard. And I said, do you really want this? I said, do you really want this? Because I said, if I had done something stupid, that would have been the end of my career. I would have probably been blacklisted, most likely. They wouldn't. Who's going to want to hire some young kid who's doing thug things or wants to fight people, in the office? Who really, So I came back. I took a deep breath. There was another illustrator there, wonderful guy, and he just said, "Hey man, just take it easy. Everything's cool." And so I got through it. And stuff. And they came up and talked to me and stuff. The people in the studio. And later on, I learned that guy got fired, the art director, because what he did was his performance was horrible to me. Like, it wasn't like there's times when I've worked with many creative directors, art directors in past, and it's like if something's wrong, where we edit it and whatever, but not the way this guy spoke to me. It was very demeaning, kind of like, it just wasn't right. So he paid. So they did the right thing. The company took care of it and stuff like that. And then I learned an important lesson that you can't just rely on these instincts just to be like, oh, I want to fight back and whatever. And whatever. You got to take a breather, get your your head to where it needs to get back to, and you'll get the job done.
Yeah, talk about a different moment that could have went way different if you just went right to emotion.
Yeah. And it's funny when I tell people that, because they see me, they talk to Jess, my wife Jess and stuff. And they go, well, Frank never seems angry, but it's like, I tell them, I'm like, look, during that time too, in my life, I've gone to therapy. I knew that my anger and a lot of stuff from my past was causing issues with my life, and I needed help. And so I remember at the time I went to my doctor, and I talked to my doctor, and he was like, hey, what do you, he was like, he thought it was going to be some major. He was like, oh, what do you need? You need some pills? And I was like, no, I don't want no pills, man. I said, I just need to talk to somebody. I really feel like I need to talk to somebody. And he said, okay. So I began going through a couple of different therapists, and I found a wonderful therapist, and he was fantastic. And he helped me to discover a lot more stuff about myself, and to be able to look at my life. And I found that a lot of my anger was really stuff, internal angers, that if I was able to walk through and whatever, even to this day, I still use a lot of those techniques to help me. If anything feels a little bit wonky or whatever, I go, okay, let me just do what I need to do to get myself realigned.
I think that's so big of you, Frankie, to bring that up, because I think, especially sometimes for a guy, it's hard sometimes for a guy to be vulnerable. And to say, like, I've had to do that. I've been in therapy. I've had a therapist, and I think sometimes, like, what's going on in here can just affect so much stuff. And
one of the greatest things that I've been really enjoying, this saying from what's happened these whole 4 years, because I see the positive, I see the pros that have come out of this, and the fact that people are talking about mental illness a lot. And I'm so happy. I'm so very happy, because I'll also admit that my mom suffered from mental illness. That's that other part of it, the story, where again, it's always been seen as a stigma. No one wants to talk about mental illness in our society, but we'll talk about cancer. We'll talk about all these different things that affect the body physically, but let's talk about the mind. Let's talk about the fact that there's many of us that are walking around, and we don't need, some people may need medication to help them, some people, but also many of us just need to talk to someone who may not be a family or friend, just someone to talk to, just to be able to get whatever that is, that society, and maybe hopefully offer some options and that we can use so that we can be able to get a better understanding of ourselves. So I look at that as a huge thing. I see people talking about mental illness more so than I've ever seen in years before.
I think with all the shit in the world that's happened, there's been a lot of good that's come out of it. I think if you weed through it and you see stuff like this, and you and I are able to have this discussion, and hopefully others see it and say, hey, you know what, he was brave enough. And
there's a lot of men. You're starting to see more males out there that are talking. I mean, from the point when I grew up in the 80s, and again, I'm a child from 1970 into the 80s. So that's when I brought. I've seen a change with males, like up to now, it's been incredible. Like males, when I grew up, the whole idea of a man crying, seeing a guy cry, that was like not heard of. That was like, you go, wow, you see a man cry. Now, now you see men really like, you sit on TV and they're just like breaking down. But that's something we need to see. We need to be able to embrace it, and vice versa, seeing the strength of women. I always talk with Jess. I go, man, I remember when I would see movies back then, and you see women as these frail, falling down, all this stuff. And now, but it's true. You see these horror movies. Like we tried to watch some movies from the 80s, and it's kind of rough. It's kind of tough to watch them now. It's like, ooh, it's like, but it's like you don't see women, like young girls today are seeing women who are, and I mean just from movies to like TV shows and just strong characters, and it's an amazing thing.
So I want to know, and I go to my fourth question that I love to ask people of who are people that either you like to follow, or podcasts, or things that you like to read, that whether it inspires you, or maybe industry stuff, or maybe even comic book writers that turned you into what you are.
Whew. Well, there's a good friend of mine named Peter Samedi. He has a comic book company called Alterna Comics. I've always admired Pete. I've known Pete for I'll say between 10 and 12 years, and off and on, and he is someone who definitely talks about the industry. He does a lot more talking about the industry itself, as well as producing comics. And he's very like matter of fact. Like, he's another New Englander. He's very straightforward and stuff. And I love that. He doesn't try to create this facade about the comic book industry. He goes, hey, look, this is a business. As much as fans love the fact of their comic book characters and whatever, I think sometimes fandom can blind people to the reality that it's a business. I've had conversations with people where they're like, they can't understand why Disney is doing what they're doing with Marvel Comics. And I'm like, this is what Disney does. It's like they're a corporation. This is what corporations do. They have to make money because they got all these different people and stuff. And you go to the movies and you watch them and you enjoy them and you pay into that. But he's one of those voices. So I would say Peter Samedi of Alterna Comics. There's a guy named there's Comics for Perch. That's another guy on YouTube, and he's pretty straightforward. I tend to like people who will talk about the industry, talk about things. Just being serious and straightforward. I don't mind a little goofiness or whatever, but I do like the sense that if you're gonna get on here and if you're gonna offer something, then offer something that can, hopefully people can digest. You can't just feed people candy all the time. That's always my thing. You eat too much candy, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
you're just gonna go.
You can sit. Yeah, you see what I mean? But if you offer somebody a good meal, then they can go, oh man, that's a good, wow, oof. That tastes good.
I want to finish this with the last of my Fridays 5, which is it's not really a question. It's more like a for anyone that comes across this video, like tell us about you and how to find you and how to follow you.
Well, Frankie B. Washington. I'm pretty much on YouTube, on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Tumblr, and I'm on Facebook. Just type my name, Frankie B. Washington. One of the things my teachers once told me in art school is that people should know who you are. And even when I do my little videos, I try to tell artists, I know you think it's cool to be calling yourself Thunder Wolf and stuff, or some weird name or whatever, but professionally, you should have a name because, who knows? There may be a company, some person who's out there, art buyer or something, who happens to like your work, but they see your name. It's those little things, those little bitty things that might turn somebody off. Your name itself is a brand. Mm-hmm. You're the brand. So the thing is that you should be able to have a name that's easy enough that people can pick up and then go, okay, let me type the name, and then whatever comes up, comes up. So anyway, you can find me on pretty much, Instagram. I have an Instagram site and also YouTube as well. Always doing drawings as well.
Yeah, I gotta hop on and see some of your long videos and pop on and watch some of those.
I'll do something right now. I'll show you something.
Oh, come on, awesome.
Here's a nice little piece.
Oh, wow. Holy shit, look at that detail.
Let's see what else. I'll pull something out real quick.
Tell you what, for any adults, if your kid's doodling, don't stop them. Look at what Frankie's doing. Oh, wow.
This was a cover. This was actually a cover for Jessica's novel.
Oh, no way.
And yeah, and
Please
by the
give
way,
her
also,
please give her my hellos.
and also I'm gonna do a shout out for my lovely wife. She's actually just graduated. She's she's been a transcriptionist for like years and stuff, for 5 years and stuff. So now she's she just did another program to become official like I don't know what the title is, but it's like she can go out and now get crazy clients or whatever for transcriptions. So she just hit me up with this whole thing about YouTube. I didn't know anything about like transcriptions in YouTube, and I'm like, whoa. So she's working on a transcription for my YouTube. She said, because I guess somehow if people in the search engine or something, the algorithm, you should have a transcription in your YouTube. So so I'm like, hey, anybody looking for a transcriptionist?
Hey, shout out for your wife for sure.
I'm still trying to learn it. I don't know everything about the whole YouTube thing. I treat YouTube as another form of my portfolio.
Yeah.
I go out there, people like it and whatever, and they get to see my work and stuff. So I'm not a master yet of YouTube.
Hey, you're a master of many things, and I am delighted that you said yes about this, because
not a problem. I was like, whoa. I was like, what did I do wrong? Like Suzanne, oh man. Like, oh.